Hello, everyone. My name is Alecia Banfield from Banfield's Professional Medical English, also known as promedicalenglish.com. And we want to welcome you to our first OET webinar of 2023. Before we start, I want to say I'm wishing everyone good luck in your OET pursuits for 2023 and beyond. And we look forward to seeing you again. We usually have these webinars once a month with OET. So no matter where you're signing in from, whether it be Australia and Tokyo or North America, welcome, welcome. And we hope that you really get something out of today's topic. That topic is focusing on the OET speaking subtest, and today we're going to be looking at intelligibility and clarity. So let me now start to screen share, and let's get right into it. So you will notice that intelligibility and clarity are kind of go together. And by clarity, we don't just mean with your pronunciation or only with your sentence structure, but both of them together. So that's going to be the focus of today. Before we go on, just so you know, on our website, promedicalenglish.com, we publish free ebooks, and one of those ebooks is the OET Speaking Coach. To get it, you can either go to promedicalenglish.com/resources, or you can just scan this little QR code here. And how it works, you go straight to the website, go to the page, you will see this picture with the title OET Coach. Just click on it, enter your email address, and please enter it correctly to ensure you get it. And then it comes right to your mailbox. Click the link and you can download the ebook. It is 100% free. You do not need to buy anything or commit to buying anything. And why is this ebook helpful? Well, it contains everything from the OET speaking criteria themselves, explaining to you exactly what's in the examiner's minds as they listen to your audio. They give examples of good and bad practice in your speech, as well as having role plays with audios that you can click on, listen to. There are real student performances, candidates just like you. And then you will see the comments that are made by the examiner, which of course is me, the tutor, and why each point got the points, the marks that they did. And also coming soon is going to be another in our ebook series, The Coach. Right now we've got speaking as well as listening, reading, and writing. And there's going to be another one that, sorry, is targeted to speaking, but especially for non-native English speakers out there. So let's jump right in. There are 9 OET criteria, and the one we're going to focus on today is, of course, the first one, intelligibility. Why is intelligibility so important? Because you see it's number 1. It's important on the job because more often than not, you as healthcare workers are going to be communicating with people in less than optimal circumstances. So they will be confused. They may be elderly and not really having good hearing or understanding what you're saying. There will usually be laymen who don't know technical language, or they'll be stressed out because they have had some sort of trauma. And your communication has to get through all of that and come through clearly to them. But in the exam, intelligibility is also very important because the examiner is listening to your audio. They're not sitting across from you. They're not watching your body language. So even on your audio in the exam, you've got to come across very, very clearly. So what does OET mean by intelligibility? Well, first of all, of course, it means that your pronunciation is easy to understand. Then your stress, and when we say stress, we don't mean hardship. We mean the stress in your voice, how you stress words in a sentence, how you stress syllables in the word, your intonation throughout the sentence, and we will cover this more in the following slides, as well as the rhythm, and all should be used effectively to portray your message. So your message doesn't just come from your words and your grammar and your vocabulary and your sentence structure, but it also comes from how you say it. It also means, when it comes to accent, that your accent has no effect on understanding you. Now, please understand, OET is not saying you should not have an accent. OET actually does not care about your accent. The only thing about accent is that your accent should not be so thick and heavy and with dialect and what's not around it, so that the person you're speaking to does not understand. Because many of you will now be going to work in English-speaking countries, speaking with native English speakers. So other points include the pace at which you speak. Now, I speak relatively slowly because I'm a language teacher and I come from a patient education and healthcare background. So I know how to slow down. However, some of you out there might naturally have a quick pace of speaking or might naturally have a slow pace of speaking. It is not that there is one pace at which you are supposed to speak. Rather, you should not be speaking so quickly that people can't understand your words, that people cannot understand your words. Nor should you be speaking so slowly that it slows down the interview and they don't understand. It will frustrate your listener, whether that be the examiner or in real life, patient or relatives. So last point, the volume of your voice. Now, yes, there are those of you who have a naturally quieter voice, and that's fine. However, remember, the point is not just to do your OET speaking subtest, but to pass your OET speaking subtest. And to do that, the examiner has to hear you clearly from word one to the last word you speak, okay? So if you know that you tend to have a very low speaking voice, if you know that your family and friends often say to you, speak up, the best thing you can do for yourself is to say to yourself, you know what? In this case, I'm doing my OET exam. I have to speak up and project my voice so that examiner can mark me honestly on how well I perform without being frustrated with listening to me. Okay? So one way or the other, your speaking should have little or no strain on the listener. So I like to say that these are the three faces and three thoughts that you want to avoid in the examiner when they are listening to your audio. So here we have this examiner going, I have no idea what you just said. Either because your voice is too low, you're mumbling, or your sentence structure is garbled, or because your intonation is off and they're thinking, are you asking me a question or giving me an answer? I don't understand what you want from me. Or if I were your patient, I would not feel confident right now. Why? Because your speaking is either too slow, or you sound unsure, you're lacking in confidence, or you're having so much difficulty even getting out the sentence that the patient or listener loses confidence in what you're saying. Rather, this is what you want. You want an examiner who just relaxes, listens to your audio, doesn't have to listen 5, 6 times to understand it, because they won't do that anyway. And they're thinking, so here we have clear diction, good grammar and vocabulary, an empathetic and informative professional, because they're getting that information, they're getting that you're connecting with them in your communication, and thinking that's great communication. Okay? So again, never space from your examiner. So practical things that might also get in the way of you scoring that full 3 marks on intelligibility is mumbling. Your voice is low and they don't understand what you're saying. No. You're speaking well at the beginning and then towards the end. Because your voice should be clear from beginning to the end. Okay? And another pattern that some people have, either by virtue of their personality or by virtue of their native language, is a flat tone where they have the same, intonation throughout everything and it sounds like a robot, or it sounds unempathetic. And that will lose you marks, both on empathy, which is one part of an OET criterion, as well as appropriateness of a language, because part of language is tone and your tone is not appropriate. Good things now that they're listening for: clear pronunciation of all words, a nice natural rhythm, as well as an intonation that matches what you are saying. You're asking a question, so your voice goes up. You really should. You're stressing the really and should, because here you're emphasizing or maybe warning the patient about something that you want them to be aware of or is especially important to their care. The good news is your voice goes up because this is good news, or unfortunately, and your voice goes down because this is bad news. It is going to sound odd to an English speaker if you go, well, fortunately, we have a way around it. They're going to think, well, if it's so fortunate, why do you sound so distressed? So it goes the other way as well. So just be aware of that. Okay. So let's talk now about the examiner, because the examiner, remember, is part of this process. Remember that examiner is only hearing you. They are not seeing you. They have no visual aids like facial expression, body language. So you have also got, as part of your intelligibility and clarity, to occasionally add in some of those non-word but still spoken cues. For example, which tells the listener she understands or he understands, or which kind of conveys, I'm listening to you. I'm not saying anything, but I'm hearing what you're saying. Okay? Or which kind of goes very quickly before, can I just interrupt you there for a minute? Okay? So even though there are no visual cues, those are little things that you can weave in. You don't want to do them so often that they distract from the main content of what you're saying, but still. So also remember that the examiner is a human being, okay? They get tired. They have headaches and they are highly trained, but subconsciously they compare you to the 25 other audios they have listened to before yours. So you don't want to be number 26 after 25 really stressful audios, okay? Because they won't be in a good mood. Contrarily, you don't, or on the other hand, you also don't want to be the kind of bad or dodgy audio after they have just listened to 2 or 3 really good audios. Okay? So just remember that. Again, these professionals are highly trained, but still, they're human beings. So often our students will send in queries or in class ask the question when it comes to speaking, will it affect my grade if I have certain problems? So we're going to highlight some of those problems in a little while, but generally, Will it affect my grade if I have problems saying some sounds because they just don't exist in my native language? And this is a case, for example, many Asian languages, Chinese, Japanese, there are just some sounds in English that don't exist in these languages and vice versa. That is very close to the next point, confusing similar sounding sounds. Now, English is a very dodgy language, I must say, and there are lots of words that sound alike but have completely different meanings. So for point one and point two, practice. That is the only way. Practice. And I'll talk more about that in the next slide. Some of you may stutter or cluster your words when you get nervous or you're anxious or whatever. Or you could just have a speech impediment. Now, your speech impediment is not just going to go away because you're speaking English. The contrary, it might actually get worse because now you're performing in a foreign language. But again, there are techniques that can help you with that issue. Have a flat tone naturally, awareness, and again, practice. Or say like and okay all the time, both from a practical standpoint and from a just being professional and sounding professional, cut it out. And again, practice. Okay? But those issues of intelligibility and clarity that I just covered, just know that actually for almost every weakness in your speaking skills when it comes to clarity and intelligibility, and as a matter of fact, all of the OET criteria, there are improvement exercises and tips that can help you. And qualified skill teachers know these tips, okay? Most of us have been doing this for nearly a decade, if not more. And we know the problems that exist beyond the linguistic. So yes, there's often a lot of focus on the linguistic features, that is grammar and vocabulary and sentence structure, which are absolutely vital, absolutely vital. But we all know that communication, especially in stressful situations, goes beyond that. And the examiners want to hear a little bit of that in your exam to really give you those top B marks or even above if you're shooting for more because maybe you are a UK foundation student. Okay, so part of your practice should be and could be looking for qualified and skilled tutors to help you, because remember, the goal is not to do OET, it is to pass OET. So just touching on a few problems, we mentioned stuttering and clustering, we mentioned low voice and so on, but let's look at more concrete points as well. So there are some hard to hear or hard to pronounce sounds in English. For example, TH. Together, these letters make the th sound. And for some people, perhaps if you have a lisp, the th and th often sound alike. And when you are speaking, it can impact understanding what you're saying for the listener. Then there is if, off, oath. That can also be a problem going from the round vowel sound to this weird, tip of the tongue between the teeth. Then there are some languages, and I'm speaking to German speakers especially, who may be here, where the V and the W sounds are actually either different, are different. So in English, the V is v, like very, whereas the W actually has a different sound completely. It's a w, as in weary or be aware of. Then we have the letter G, which just exists in the English language to stump you, quite frankly. Why? Because the letter G has different sounds in English depending on the word they are in. So I'm going to start with the second one here. It has a hard sound. G, girl, good. That's a hard G, G. But we also have a soft G, generous, J, generous. Different sound. And then when we put another vowel behind it, a U, then we've got another set of problems because it stops being G and becomes gw, gw. In some words, inguinal. So it's not inguinal, it's inguinal. But in some cases, we don't even acknowledge the U. So guess. It's G-U-E-S-S, but it's guess. Why? Don't ask. Then there is a word that often gives people problems in pronunciation because there are two vowels in the syllable and you think, okay, two vowels, O and E, it should be office. But actually, clothes, that O-T-H-E-S, is one syllable, one. So it is said so quickly. It goes from the O to the Z. Oats, oats. So it becomes clothes, clothes. And yes, it does take some practice to get, but that's how it sounds. And then, of course, most of you, if not all of you already know by heart that P and H together, P, P, but when we put them together, it is. Now, there are some exceptions, like haphazard. You hardly use that in healthcare anyway, but for the most part, pharmacy, pharmacology, classic example, okay? And then, of course, there are similar sounding words, sorry, that it really is important that you practice them and get them clearly because they can potentially change the meaning of what you're saying. For example, chair versus share, two completely different words. Trickle versus trigger. This one is a classic that many people get mixed up with. Bowel, which is in the gut, as opposed to bowl. Bowel, bowl. Then there is affect, which means to impact or to influence something, and effect, which is similar, but we're talking about the actual outcome. Now, AFFECT is even trickier and more annoying because AFFECT has two pronunciations. There is affect to impact, but for those of you familiar with psychiatry and psychology, you know there's also the word affect, which means the facial expression and kind of like the body attitude, you know, how they hold their body. And that is pronounced affect as opposed to affect. So there's both how the vowel is pronounced and the stress in the word. You pronounce it correctly, it changes the meaning of what you're saying, and it can confuse people. So I'll just do one more on this page. Another one that often confuses people is these three here. Even for English speakers, honestly, it's a little bit crazy. One is to accept, to take and keep. Accept, which means that is not included in this, and to expect, which means you're waiting there because you know something is coming. So accept, and expect. Okay? Now, the best way I would say to practice these words is not to say them one after the other, but rather put them in context, in a sentence, and actually practice the sentence. Okay? And often after a while, you get that, you know, feeling of how it should sound, and then your muscles kind of learn. All right? And then there are just some crazy words that are a challenge even for native English speakers, to be perfectly honest. For example, deteriorate, or itinerary, or phenomenon. Now, things like February and so on. Honestly, what I say to some students is if you really have problems saying most of these words, try to find another word that's simpler. For example, there's no, you know, substitute for the word February. February is February. But for deteriorate, just say get worse. Honestly, it's easier. For phenomenon, honestly, just say event or unusual event. It's easier, okay? So where you can make your life easier with pronunciation, make your life easier with pronunciation, okay? So we've spoken about you when it comes to intelligibility. We've spoken about the examiner, what they're listening for in intelligibility and clarity. Now let's look at the interlocutor and the kind of role they can play. Now the interlocutor is not the examiner. Let me repeat that. Your interlocutor in the exam is not your final examiner. The interlocutor doesn't even know who the examiner is. However, if you get nervous looking at this person's face or just from being under the stress of the exam, and the interlocutor brings their personality into the exam room, a less than optimal interlocutor can throw you off your game and just have you mumbling and mixing up your words. Now, OET examiners are trained and highly trained, so they know. They're just there to help you through your role play. They're not there to confuse you. They're not there to overly challenge you. They're there to execute the role play with you and play the role of the patient, the relative, or whatever caregiver, okay? Or in the case of veterinary medicine, the pet owner, the animal owner. So how do you deal with that situation? How do you anticipate that situation? We teach our students, our candidates, basically go into the exam expecting anything. And how do you expect anything? In your practice, in your role play practice, in your classroom with your tutor. Practice even different kinds of personalities in the interlocutor, which I know sounds a little odd. But yes, different personalities, different speaking styles, so that you encounter a quiet patient, a quiet interlocutor who speaks very softly, an abrupt one who just answers yes or no, or a chatty one who's. Why is this important? Because these are actually skills that you need, not just in OET, but in real life. But yeah, definitely in OET. Okay. So how do you say to a patient who speaks so softly, how do you ask them to repeat what they've said? Think about that. For a chatty interlocutor, how do you interrupt them politely and professionally, but get back control of the role play and guide it forward? Or for an interlocutor who's abrupt and who goes yes, no, how do you ask questions to kind of get more information out of them at one time? All right. Also, you should practice different kinds of scenarios: simple information giving, information gathering, a difficult patient, a conflict-filled patient, sensitive topics, and so on. Because this helps to build your vocabulary, this helps you practice your pronunciation, your sentence structure, your intonation. And so that when you do go into the exam, no matter what that interlocutor throws at you, you're on the ball and you've got it. Okay? So once again, hold on. Right. So once again, some of what I've covered today is in the OET Speaking Coach that is already on our website, the free ebook that you just enter your email in the form and you get it, no obligation. And some of it is going to be in our upcoming ebook, also in the quote series that is especially targeting non-native speakers. Okay, so that's it for today. I hope that this was helpful for you as just a nice introduction. It gives you food for thought. And one thing I want to get a hold, to reinforce with you is this. When you practice, record your role plays. Listen to yourself. I know many of you go, oh, I don't like listening to myself. This is not a time to be shy. This is not a time. As a matter of fact, I am going to even share this again with you because this is important. Should have mentioned this. Kept it up at that time. After you practice, listen to yourself. Ask yourself, was I clear with this language? Was I clear with this sentence? Did my tone match what I was saying? How can I do better? Practice it again. Listen again. One of the single most important things you can do to improve your listening is actually to listen to yourself. Okay? So, once again, thank you guys for joining me. And for those of you who are about to do your OET, I wish you all the best, lots of luck. This is me sending you positive vibes. Take care, and you can check us out on promedicalenglish.com. Bye for now.